Welcome back to Kids Speak Out Oregon. We've got a great panel and we're talking about homelessness, something all of you live with. You see it every day when you go to the store, when you go to school. Does it scare you? Does it scare you? I think I asked you that in the first half of the show, but tell me honestly, when you pass by the people on the street, do you worry that somebody is going to pick your pocket or ask you for something and push you around a little bit? Yeah, Abby?
Occasionally. Most of the time when I walk by homeless, they're usually asleep or in their tents. But there are the occasional times when I walk by homeless and they are up and walking around. Sometimes they're screaming, and just because they are on drugs. And so it's slightly frightening. Sometimes I worry, do they have a knife?
And yet nothing is really being done to make them move, right?
Yeah.
They're welcome here. Or are they not welcome? How do you feel about that? Do you read the papers? Do the people in your city welcome the homeless, or they just tolerate the homeless?
I think there's a mix. I think there's people who don't want the homeless here. I think there's people who are welcoming them, and I think there's a lot of tolerance that's happening, and I think that revolves around a lot of different stigmas around the houseless population, and we're not really viewing them as people, but rather as sometimes they're in the way, or, you know, as we've talked about earlier, like, oh, I need to go to the movie theater, but they're in front of here, and it's, you know, we're not thinking about how they feel or what necessarily their needs are or what we can do to better help them. So there's a lot of different opinions going on about the houseless population.
Well, I think one of the reasons that we are tolerant is because we look at the homeless and we think it could be us. It could be us. Do you ever think about that, Elliot?
I do wonder, because I know that a lot of times people end up in situations that they just weren't expecting, and it's due to a number of different reasons. And I think it could happen to anyone. But personally, I've never worried about my home situation, but I definitely think...
You live with your parents,
I live
right?
with my parents,
yeah, well,
as of now, yeah.
At your age, it's probably not something that you think about, unless you're a child who's living with a homeless family or in a homeless family, and maybe they don't even think about it either, because that's perhaps all they know. But do you think that parents of children, homeless parents, should be allowed to raise their children and have them on the street?
I think it'd be really hard to separate families, especially because I know that a lot of foster care situations can be really traumatic for kids. And I think it really depends on the situation, but I do think that it might be worse to separate families, but I'm not really sure.
Laura?
I think I agree with that. It should depend and definitely be a choice, because like to tear someone's kid away from them can be hard, and especially for the kid because they're used to, you know, their own family. It can be difficult for both sides, and yeah.
I personally agree with you. I've done a lot of work with foster children, helping foster children to be placed in more permanent situations, but it's always difficult unless they have been removed when they are really tiny. They want to go back to their parents. They don't care where they are. There's that bond, and even if they are hungry or haven't been treated as well as a child should be treated, it's still the bond that pulls them back to their home, and wherever that home might be. So any solutions to this? Is there anything that you think that we could do or should be doing?
I mean, I think it's a tough situation because sometimes the parents are going to want what's best for their child, and they're going to want, you know, even looking at the mental health aspect of it, that's going to be the hardest part of it. But some parents also would rather their kids be in a stable situation. But I think we need to implement resources so that these parents can have their kids in a safe environment.
You know, there are a lot of groups in this city and other cities that really want to help. They really, really believe in helping the people who are out there who are homeless and who are hungry, many of them, who have children or who just haven't been able to move from the situation that they're in. There's so many groups and nobody's working together. So how do we get everybody working together so that we can maybe get something done? You have any ideas on that?
I mean, just spreading the message like this, what we're doing right now, could help everyone work together, and we need to make sure that the homeless know too, that we can work together with them, and I don't know, we just need to do more things like this so then the message spreads.
Anybody else?
I was going to say, I think the first step we should be taking is an individual step to start challenging our mindset around it as well, because if we want people to start working together, we need to start thinking about any biases we have against the houseless community, or ideas we can formulate to start working together. So I think we first need to work on our own personal growth and then start communicating and getting in touch with people and brainstorming.
It's a great idea. What would be the incentive for you to go out and do something to help the homeless?
I've volunteered at a place called City Team, and we volunteer to feed the homeless. And then by night it's a shelter. But while I've been there, I've just realized that there's just this bias and this stereotype on homeless people, that they're always dangerous. And I think that I've just realized that they aren't always dangerous, and there are some really nice people out there, and we just have to remember that they are people. And yeah.
Any services that you think that we should automatically provide for the homeless?
Food and water.
And housing, I think. I think giving people access to long-term housing is going to be pretty beneficial long-term.
Yeah, and to stop putting in, like Max said, bandages, just long-term fixes, and not just temporary things that will help the problem for a certain period of time.
What do you think of building a village where homeless could go and live? But it would be mostly homeless people there, or all homeless people there, except those who would care to come and help take care of them. Yeah. Abby?
I've seen forms of them before, and I actually think they're really effective. I think they're a good idea, because the one I saw, it wasn't whole houses, but they were small enclosures. And I think that's a really good idea, because then they have access to food and water and all the things that they need to live, but then they also do have the opportunity to either keep living the way they want to live, or they can try, if they want to, get a job. And so they have the ability to do that and go into an interview feeling confident.
But if these people could learn a skill, they could move up and be able to take care of themselves on their own.
Yeah, I think that they need to be educated on how to do something like that, so that getting a job is accessible to them.
Good idea.
Yeah, and I think maybe the people that are with the housing thing that we were just talking about, maybe the people who are connected to that can help the people who are living there find them jobs or something.
A good idea.
And so they don't have to just try it on their own. They can have some help.
So I am so happy that you were here to talk to us about this. Whatever you do in the future, I hope that you will continue to think about the homeless as you have today. Maybe we will not have homeless in another 5 or 10 years. I doubt that. That's probably optimistic, but let's see what we can all do working together. Thank you for coming in, my Oregonians, today.
Thank you.
Our panel has come up with some interesting solutions, some ideas. What is a growing problem, not only here in Oregon, but around the country. We've looked at some solution ideas today. Permanent shelters and home sharing are some possible solutions, and we hope that somebody will come up with something, and we know that there are some people who are working on it, because that's one of the reasons that we're here today. We've been talking about the Harbor of Hope, a sponsor of Kids Speak Out. They're currently working on a plan that we hope to hear about in another episode. Many observers feel that finding homes for the homeless is an important step. We hope to have more information on that in our other episode that's coming up later.